It's late at night on December 17, 2013. A young woman named Heather returns home from an exciting date, eagerly calling her friend Brianna to share every detail of her romantic evening.
Hey, how did it go?
OMG, I had such an amazing time. It was perfect. I need to tell you all about it.
Really? That's so nice. I'm so happy for you. Now you can finally move on from that toxic relationship.
Yeah, I'm so done with that. I'm so done with him.
I can imagine. I want to know every detail. Spill it already.
I really want to, but he actually offered me a ride home, which means I need to hang up now. Can I fill you in tomorrow morning? Every little detail included.
What a cliffhanger, girl. All right, let's do that. Enjoy the ride and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
30 minutes later, Brianna gets called again.
Hey, what's up?
He called me.
Who? Your ex, Sidney?
Yes.
What? Why? I thought you were done with him.
I am. But he told me he left his wife, apologized, and confessed that he missed me. He wants to meet up now. Please, I don't know what to do.
Listen to me and don't do anything irrational. Whatever you do, don't answer his calls or texts. Put your phone away and sleep on it. We'll talk tomorrow morning. It's gonna be fine, okay?
Okay.
All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow, Brianna.
After that emotional phone call, Heather Elvis disappeared without a trace, never to be seen again. Picturesque Horry County in South Carolina is considered an idyllic place for many. Famous for its numerous beaches, including the beautiful and popular Myrtle Beach, it also boasts diverse terrain and lush forests, flowing rivers, and lively, friendly townships. This is where the 20-year-old Heather lives. She's the oldest daughter of South Carolina natives Terry and Debbie Elvis. She was extremely close to her parents and younger sister. Her father fondly recalls their family dynamic. "We've always been incredibly close, always ready to lend a helping hand to each other." Heather had an incredibly close bond with her father, communicating with him daily via text messages. Fiercely independent, when she graduated from St. James High School in 2011, she wanted to move out of the family home to share an apartment with her best friend, Brianna Warland. Terry and Debbie fully supported her decision. Heather is a young woman with big dreams and an unstoppable spirit. At just 20 years old, she worked tirelessly as a waitress at the Tilted Kilt, a Scottish-themed restaurant in Myrtle Beach. But that was just the beginning for Heather. Alongside her job, she pursued her passion for cosmetology, determined to make her mark as a full-time beautician. Heather's younger sister Morgan knew her better than anyone. Heather was unstoppable, she said. She lived and breathed makeup, craved the spotlight, and had no limits to her dreams. Heather's boundless creativity and determination made her a beloved figure in town. Her warm, carefree nature and positive outlook on life made everyone love her. When people spoke of Heather, their faces lit up with joy. A close friend described her as a free-spirited, outgoing soul who embraced life with all her heart. Heather was all about love and living life to the fullest, they said. By early summer 2013, Heather had lived in an apartment with her best friend Brianna in Myrtle Beach for about a year. Her studies and life were going great, but everything was about to change with one fateful encounter at the Tilted Kilt, setting off a series of events that would ultimately lead to a very tragic outcome. While bringing trays back into the kitchen, Heather bumped into 37-year-old father of three, Sidney Moorer, a local maintenance man who ran a small business fixing malfunctioning kitchen appliances in the Myrtle Beach area. Heather was immediately attracted to the maintenance man as they started chatting. She tweeted from her account, Moonchild, hinting at her new crush, saying, "I've got a taste for older men." By the end of July, she had posted several sexually suggestive messages on social media directed at the guy who builds things at my job. Heather also often pointed out Sidney Moorer to her friends and coworkers, telling them, "That's the guy." Sidney enjoyed Heather's attention and began frequently visiting the restaurant to chat with her. The two often laughed in the kitchen whenever Sidney was asked to work on the appliances. In July, the innocent crush had blossomed into something more serious. Heather put out 2 status updates a minute apart on Twitter, hinting at a possible affair between her and Sidney. She wrote, "Baby did a bad thing," and "I'm in way too deep, but watch me get deeper." Most of Heather's co-workers knew her affection for Sidney, and rumors about the pair's affair began circulating. One of Heather's co-workers later said, "We all knew about it because people made fun of Heather, knowing that he was a married man." Heather was often made fun of and called multiple names by girls we worked with. One day, 2 girls called the Tilted Kilt and pretended to be Tammy, Sidney's wife. In August, the rumors seemed substantiated when Sidney started hanging around the Tilted Kilt on his days off, often bringing Heather coffee and bagels or waiting around the back of the restaurant in his vehicle for her to finish her shift. The pair also began talking more openly with friends about their love affair, with Sidney even telling acquaintances he was considering employing Heather as a full-time nanny for his children when he and his wife possibly moved to Florida in the future. Heather mentioned to her friends that Sidney had asked her to be the nanny for his children, which they all found strange, considering they appeared to be having a sexual relationship. Heather and Sidney communicated via mobile phone constantly and would often drive their cars to remote and isolated locations to meet for sex. It was a toxic roller coaster of emotions for Heather. Sidney frequently told her he was unhappy with his wife and planned to leave her, which he never did. Heather's friends warned her that the older married man was stringing her along. By mid-September of that year, the situation had become more complex and strained, setting the stage for the tragic events that followed. Heather's tweet, "Once upon a time an angel and a devil fell in love, it did not end well," seemed prophetic. The situation escalated when Sidney's 34-year-old wife, Tammy, discovered the affair and called Heather to address it. Heather's housemate, Brianna, who was present during the call, reported that Tammy degraded Heather, accusing her of being nothing more than a booty call for Sidney. Tammy then made Sidney speak to Heather, and he harshly told her she was nothing to him. He said she was just someone who spread her legs. This phone call shattered Heather's self-esteem. Tammy and Sidney Moorer's marriage appeared to be highly abusive, with criminal prosecutor Chris Helms later stating that Tammy was the dominant one in the relationship. She controlled Sidney, dictating his work and life. Helms described Sidney as utterly submissive. Tammy was furious about the affair and aimed not just to end the relationship, but to ruin Heather's life. Tammy's control over Sidney included handcuffing him to the bed at night to prevent him from leaving, changing his phone's passcode to one only she knew, and coercing him into getting her name tattooed above his crotch. Sidney went to great lengths to fulfill these extreme demands, desperately hoping to mend his marriage. Brianna reported that Tammy's attacks escalated into a full-fledged campaign of harassment, including repeated calls to Heather's workplace to get her fired. Tammy was relentless, using Sidney's phone to send pictures and videos of her and Sidney performing sexual acts. Heather begged Sidney to stop his wife's harassment, texting, "I lost hours today because they sent me home after she kept calling." Heartbroken and devastated by the betrayal, Heather tried to regain control of her life. She even started attending church again with Brianna. Tammy's harassment continued. In early November, Tammy sent Heather threatening messages saying, "You can tell me where you are right now, or I will find out another way. I'm giving you one last chance to answer before we meet in person." Tammy mentioned that she had been having Sidney followed since January 2012. Mentally and physically exhausted, Heather replied, "I think you're a little obsessed with me. I'm nobody you need to worry about anymore." She just wanted to move on. By late November, about 2 weeks after Tammy's last threatening messages, Heather's life seemed to improve. Sidney and Tammy took their 3 children on a 3-week road trip across California in their newly purchased Ford F-150 truck. With the Moorers gone, Heather felt she could finally relax. Additionally, Heather secured her dream job as a makeup artist at a beauty salon, set to start just before Christmas. She couldn't contain her joy and eagerly shared her excitement with her loved ones. Heather was troubled by another significant concern. In early November, she and her co-workers at the Tilted Kilt noticed that she had rapidly gained considerable weight. Heather was worried as she suspected she might be carrying Sidney's child. In a tense and fearful moment, she sought the help of her manager, Jessica Cook, to take a pregnancy test right there at the restaurant. Heather was left feeling uncertain about the thought of being pregnant after the test results came back as an error. Her best friend confirmed that Heather had taken the test in early November and wasn't intimate with anyone besides Sidney. Despite these concerns, Heather, ever the optimist, decided it was time to move on. She was optimistic about finding a more fulfilling and loving connection, so she decided to take a chance and go on a first date with Steve Giraldi. They had been chatting for a short time, but she had a good feeling about him. On the evening of December 17th, Heather and Steve met around 1 p.m. They decided to explore Myrtle Beach, admiring the local Christmas illuminations. Later, they went to a nearby parking lot where Steve taught Heather how to drive his manual car. Heather was thrilled and texted a smiling photo to her father and her best friend Brianna, proudly stating she had just learned to drive a stick and felt like a pro. Steve later mentioned they had planned to meet again for a second date before he dropped Heather off at her apartment in Carolina Forest about 1:15 a.m. At about 1:45 a.m., Brianna received a distressing call from Heather. Heather was hysterical, crying, and said Sidney had called her. Brianna was alarmed, having believed Heather was moving past Sidney. Heather explained that Sidney claimed he had left his wife, apologized, and expressed a desire to see her and be with her. Worried about Heather's emotional state, Brianna urged her not to act impulsively and to sleep on it. She promised they would discuss it first thing in the morning. With that, they said their goodbyes. The next day, on December 19th, the local police were called to investigate an abandoned vehicle, a green Dodge Intrepid parked in a remote riverside area known as Peachtree Landing, approximately 8 miles from Myrtle Beach on the Waccamaw River. This tranquil and hidden riverside spot, perfect for small boat landings, was seldom visited. The car was securely locked, and after running the registration, it turned out to be registered to Terry Elvis, Heather's father. Terry was at home, relaxing on the sofa, when the police knocked on his door to inform him about the car. Confused and unable to reach Heather on her phone, he agreed to accompany the officers to Peachtree Landing. Upon seeing Heather's car parked oddly in the isolated area, he was shocked but not immediately worried. He used a spare key to unlock the vehicle and allowed the officers to search it. He initially thought the car might have been stolen and abandoned there. However, the lack of Heather's purse, keys, or cell phone in the car heightened his concern. He tried calling Heather's mobile phone again, but it was off. He then checked at the Tilted Kilt where Heather worked, but she wasn't there and wasn't scheduled to work until the following day. Realizing something was seriously wrong, Terry said, "This is totally out of the ordinary. Heather's never done anything like this before. Something's wrong." Despite the lack of broken glass, signs of struggle, or blood at Peachtree Landing, the Horry Police Department wasted no time in launching a missing persons case as they didn't initially perceive the location and the car as a crime scene. Officers and volunteers began searching the areas around Peachtree Landing while the drivers combed the river. Heather's family and friends mounted a search across several counties. Despite the bitter cold, teams of volunteers braved the elements, combing South Carolina by boat, ATV, on foot, and horseback in a relentless effort. Heather's father voiced the family's desperation, saying, "No amount of attention, no amount of law enforcement, no amount of work effort that I do or anybody does is ever going to be enough until she's back home again." Heather disappeared after her date in the early morning hours of December 18th. There was no clear indication of why she left her apartment again after the date. Everything seemed perfectly normal at the apartment, with no signs of anything out of place. Earlier that evening, Heather's date, Steve, was teaching her how to drive a manual transmission car in a parking lot. Heather excitedly called her friend Brianna after the date to share how well it had gone. She proudly sent her father a picture of herself behind the wheel, a moment that brought joy to both of them. Terry remembered attempting to teach Heather to drive a manual transmission for years, but lacking the patience. Now she had learned on her own, and he was very proud of her. When Heather failed to show up for work the next day, police found her abandoned car at the boat landing near her parents' home. Terry urged people to cherish their loved ones, saying, "I think everybody should take a moment to hold their family and tell them that they love them, because sometimes it's not enough to just assume that they know." The family is desperately hoping for someone to step forward with information about Heather's disappearance. Their message is clear. We're holding on to hope that the right person will come forward and say, "I saw something," or "I heard something," or "I know something," or "I did something." Meanwhile, the Christmas tree is still up with Heather's presents underneath, in eager anticipation of her return. Human remains were found near the boat landing, but analysis later revealed they belonged to a male. With no physical evidence to go on, the mystery of Heather's disappearance remained unresolved. Detectives began tracing Heather's movements on December 17th and 18th. Steve, the man Heather had met the night she was last seen, was brought in for questioning but was quickly cleared of any suspicion and released. This was a time of immense pain for Heather's community, especially her co-workers, who still felt the void left by her absence. A colleague mentioned, "Heather worked with us for over a year, and we still keep her name on the schedule because until there's peace for everyone, her family, the community, our work family, we're keeping her name there." In a shocking move, Tammy Moorer took to social media to continue her campaign of hatred. On Facebook, she posted a lengthy rant starting with, "While Sidney cheated on me in September and October with a psycho whore who has since gone missing." This was on December 20th, just 2 days after Heather's disappearance. After being informed about the turbulent relationship by Heather's roommate, Brianna, and several Tilted Kilt employees, the police brought Sidney in for questioning. Right from the beginning, Sidney was elusive and unhelpful. He claimed he was not near Peachtree Landing on the night of the 17th or the morning of the 18th and insisted he had no contact with Heather. He also bizarrely claimed that he was with his wife, Tammy, recording their public sexual encounters. The detectives were skeptical of his story and were committed to uncovering solid evidence of the truth. Things got really interesting when the detectives started digging into Heather's call history and phone records. It all started on the morning of December 18th when Heather received a mysterious call from an unknown number, just as Brianna had mentioned. What's intriguing is that the call came from a public payphone and lasted about 5 minutes. Heather was frantically trying to reach the caller, making multiple attempts to call back the number starting at 1:35 a.m. She dialed the payphone 9 times, clearly showing her desperation to speak with the person again. An investigator later commented, "The only reason she could possibly be calling that phone 9 times, a phone she's never heard of before, is to get the person who just talked to her back on the line." Investigators used Heather's phone records to trace a call to a phone booth at a gas station in Myrtle Beach. Security cameras recorded someone using the payphone when the call was made to Heather. When Sidney was confronted with this evidence, he initially denied making the call but eventually confessed, saying, "I did. I called her." During questioning, Tammy Moorer discussed her marriage and denied any involvement in Heather's disappearance, stating, "You don't understand. I had boyfriends. We had a marriage. That's okay. I could care less if he had sex with 100 people." She also tried to depict Heather as mentally unstable, saying, "This girl's not right. She's not normal." Following their suspicions, detectives reviewed all available local surveillance footage and found further incriminating evidence. Shortly before making the call, Sidney was captured on surveillance cameras purchasing a pregnancy test from a local Walmart. When asked if the test was for Heather, Sidney denied it, saying it was for his wife. The most compelling evidence came from the surveillance footage taken along the remote road to Peachtree Landing. At 3:36 a.m., a dark Ford F-150 truck similar to Sidney's was seen driving towards the spot where Heather's car was discovered and leaving at 3:46 a.m. The experts later confirmed that the truck was an exact match to Sidney's vehicle. The investigators were convinced that Sidney was the last person to have spoken with Heather and seen her at Peachtree Landing. Investigators reconstructed Heather's final whereabouts using data from her phone, creating a detailed timeline of her movements. At 2:30 a.m., Heather's phone attempted to call the phone booth from which Sidney had called her but received no answer. Her phone then moved towards Longbeard's Bar and Grill in Carolina Forest near her apartment, staying there for about 15 minutes. It then moved to Augusta Plantation Drive before returning to Longbeard's Bar and Grill for another 15 minutes. A call was made to Sidney's phone but went unanswered. Heather's phone returned to her apartment where it stayed for 5 minutes. At 3:25 a.m. on December 18th, Heather called Sidney's phone, which resulted in a 4-minute conversation. By 3:37 a.m., Heather's phone was at Peachtree Landing, and she made 3 attempts to call Sidney's phone, all of which went unanswered. Another effort to reach Sidney at 3:41 a.m. was also unsuccessful. By 3:42 a.m., Heather's phone was switched off. The location data from her cell phone matched surveillance images of Sidney's truck heading towards Peachtree Landing, which was highly incriminating. Further damning evidence emerged after investigators obtained a search warrant for the Moorers' home. Suspiciously, the Moorers had disposed of their home surveillance system on December 20th and installed a new one on the 21st. Although investigators couldn't get the old system, they confiscated the new one. They found footage of Sidney and Tammy Moorer thoroughly cleaning the passenger side of their truck and burning the rags used for cleaning. This activity was recorded the same day they installed the new surveillance cameras. A prayer vigil for Heather Elvis took place at Peachtree Landing, the location where her abandoned car was found in December 2013. Heather's family urged anyone with information to come forward, emphasizing that even the smallest detail could be crucial. They also plan to organize a fundraiser to rebuild a community garden at the landing, with the proceeds going to the Q Center for Missing Persons. During the fundraiser, rocks would be sold and spread in the garden on Heather's birthday, June 30th. In February 2014, after months of uncertainty, the police made a significant breakthrough in the case of Heather's disappearance, leading to the arrest of Sidney and Tammy Moorer. They were charged with kidnapping and, remarkably, even without a body, they were also accused of murder. Shockingly, the couple kept silent about Heather's whereabouts despite the charges against them. Sidney and Tammy Moorer were held behind bars in connection with Heather's disappearance, but the case saw slow progress. Terry Elvis, Heather's father, had discovered numerous calls to one particular number in Heather's phone records before her phone stopped working. This number belonged to 38-year-old Sidney Moorer, indicating a possible romantic relationship between him and Heather. While Sidney and Tammy were in custody, the police kept gathering evidence to support their case. However, they didn't have enough evidence to proceed with the murder charges, so it was eventually dropped. This was disappointing for Heather's mother, Debbie, but she felt some relief knowing there wouldn't be a murder trial. Heather's family also hoped that this development might encourage more people to come forward with information now that the murder charges were off the table. After murder charges were dropped, Sidney and Tammy posted bail and were set free while awaiting their kidnapping trial. Despite a gag order, the Moorer family turned to social media to assert their innocence and claimed they were being set up. During a poignant televised interview, Sidney opened up about the emotional toll of the ordeal, expressing deep frustration at its impact on his family and career. He insisted, "It's not a game. It never has been a game from the very beginning. The meanness I've seen come out of people, it amazes me." Sidney said that he had lost nearly everything he had worked for and couldn't find a job while the case was ongoing. Despite the personal costs, he vowed to continue fighting the charges, emphasizing the danger of an actual criminal being on the loose if he falsely confessed. His appearance in the media and his refusal to obey the gag order eventually led to his imprisonment for 5 months for contempt of court. Tammy openly shared her feelings, saying, "I feel like this town is going to crucify me because of all the lies that have been told." Despite their attempts to rebuild their reputation through public appeals and legal action, the Moorers encountered complex legal challenges and intense social scrutiny which profoundly impacted them. Even though the murder charges were dropped, the kidnapping charges remained, ensuring that the legal proceedings would continue. The community's hope for Heather's return and the quest for justice remained inexhaustible as they awaited further developments. Months turned into years, and by 2017, Sidney Moorer was found guilty of obstruction of justice and sentenced to 10 years in prison. This conviction marked the beginning of the trial of Sidney and Tammy Moorer for the abduction of Heather Elvis, setting the stage for a dramatic legal battle. The media covered this high-profile case extensively, reflecting the public's massive interest. It has been 6 years since Heather was last seen. After numerous witness testimonies, presentation of evidence, and hours of court proceedings, the case finally progressed to 2019 when the verdict was announced. Tammy and Sidney Moorer have been found guilty by the jury on multiple charges of kidnapping Heather Elvis, leading to a 30-year prison sentence for each of them. Even after the verdict, Sidney continued to state his innocence in court. He expressed his urge to provide closure to Heather's family, but insisted that he had no information to offer. He said, "If I could provide closure, I would. I have children of my own, so I understand. But unfortunately, there is nothing I can give." Heather's father, Terry Elvis, expressed his enduring frustration and heartache, recalling a touching moment after the verdict. As Terry and Debbie arrived in the back room, Terry put his hands on Debbie's shoulders and said, "Now what?" "Exactly," said Debbie. "Even though this is over, we still haven't found her. There must be something we can still do, something we can hang over their heads to make them talk, some kind of incentive." Unfortunately, at this point, Terry and Debbie couldn't add anything to the case. The case was officially closed. Even though the case was closed, it remained unresolved for the family, which was a heavy emotional burden on the Elvis family. Debbie spoke about the deep pain and determination to keep Heather's memory alive to find answers. Every June 30th, Heather's birthday, the Elvis family dedicates themselves to posting missing person flyers around town. They hope to keep Heather's case in the public eye and to maintain awareness of other missing persons. Debbie emphasized the importance of persistence, vowing never to give up the search for answers for Heather and other missing individuals. She expressed a deep empathy for other families in similar situations, saying she knew the pain all too well and wanted to ensure that no one in her position felt alone. She also expressed profound sorrow and longing for not knowing Heather's fate. She described the ache of a mother yearning to hold her child again, the constant thoughts of what could have been done differently, and the devastating reality of being unable to care for her child in any capacity. They refer to it as closure. "I despise that term," she said, highlighting the bittersweet nature of the word in the context of their ongoing search. For Terry, the hope that one day Heather would be found remained, even though he acknowledged the improbability of such an event. "I hold out hope that I'll turn around one day at the front door and she'll walk in," he said. "Do I really think that'll happen? Deep down, no, I don't. But I'll never give up." The case of Heather Elvis stands as a testament to her family's resilience and enduring hope. Despite the passing years and the weight of uncertainty, the Elvis family continues their quest for answers. Sidney and Tammy Moorer's convictions provided a sense of justice, but also underscored the absence of closure without Heather's return. The family's actions and dedication to raising awareness are fed by a deep love for Heather and a determination to prevent other families from facing the same sorrow. The public's continued interest in Heather's case is crucial. It highlights the importance of community support in cases of missing persons and the role of media in keeping such cases alive in the public's consciousness. The annual ritual of posting flyers on Heather's birthday serves as a reminder of her disappearance and a call to action for the community to remain vigilant and on the lookout for any missing person. In the broader context, Heather's case sheds light on the complexities and challenges faced by families of missing persons. It highlights the emotional toll, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the undying hope that loved ones will be found. For the Elvis family, the journey is ongoing, marked by the dual realities of seeking justice and enduring the pain of Heather's absence. The story of Heather Elvis is a gripping tale of love, toxic jealousy, and ultimately tragedy. For her parents, it's a powerful narrative of love, resilience, and an uncompromising determination to uncover the truth. Hey, Armchair Detectives, thank you for watching. Your support really means a lot to us. If you like this video, we've got another one you won't want to miss. It's about an 11-year-old girl who was so excited to watch the Super Bowl with her family, but then just disappeared without a trace. It's a heartbreaking and mysterious story. Join us in exploring the truth behind what really happened. Click the video to start the investigation. Thanks again for being here with us.